I would like anybody to show me besides Jacksonville another bad game that Brian Hoyer played this year. Not mediocre, not good, not great. Just the only real crapper that he's had so far in the first 8 games of the season. What do you think about all that, John?
Well, at least, give some people there is understanding because we realize the situation, and I've talked about it numerous times in the past. Brian Hoyer as an undrafted player, can't afford to make egregious mistakes, can't afford to have games like he did against Jacksonville. That's the stuff where it's going to immediately come up. And it's going to come up because the Cleveland Browns drafted Johnny Manziel in the first round. You don't take a quarterback in the first round of the draft if you're not planning on moving forward with that particular player at a certain point. So it is fair to say the Cleveland Browns organization's mindset was that Johnny Manziel was going to be the future of the quarterback position. Now, that was before he got there. And as I wrote a number of columns during the summer, and the fact we've talked about it ad nauseum at times. He didn't do the things he needed to do to prepare to take over the football team. Johnny Manziel left the door open for Brian Hoyer. Nobody else did. And Brian Hoyer took his opportunity and he ran with it. And as long as Cleveland stays in the hunt in what has turned out to be one of the toughest divisions in football, again, Johnny Manziel is not in the conversation until Cleveland either falls out of the playoff race or in the postseason, the off season, when you have to discuss what the plan is for next year and beyond.
I'll tell you what too. It'll be interesting to see what happens this week. Either way it goes, but I'm curious if the Browns go to Cincinnati and don't get the victory, how many people will act like that's the end of the season instead of it just being the midway point that it is. But, I mean, it's a big one this week. It's a test, like you said, to see how you can go do that in your division. That's the only intra-divisional matchup, by the way, that has yet to have taken place is Cleveland and Cincinnati in the North. And again, the only division where every team is where they are, and it's the most competitive in football. It's where the Browns are going to have to go out there and make their hay in the second half of the season. And this was also just looking at the schedule. You and I kind of talked about this when we mentioned the pitfalls of the early bye week. The one good thing about this game is even though it's not an actual bye week, it's close enough that they'll at least get a bit of a break. I know Coach Pettin and Brian Hoyer had talked about doing whatever you got to do for the next 3 days to rush together, get it together, go hustle by hook or crook and get a victory. If it's by half a point, it doesn't matter. Go get out of Cincinnati and try to get a victory, and then have a modified bye week, a little bit of an off weekend to at least get you a 10-day stretch to heal some guys up, particularly Jordan Cameron. Although I did want to ask you, before we switch off the Browns, what are your thoughts? I don't know that Jordan Cameron necessarily plays again this season, depending on where people feel with 3 concussions in 18 months.
Yeah, that's one of those things that obviously is a huge issue, not just in Cleveland, but in the NFL as a whole. So, and people especially have repeated concussions in such a short period. At that point, a lot of it is left up to the player once they're cleared. You've seen Wes Welker. He's had 3 concussions in an even shorter period. He's out there. He wants to play. So I think a lot of it, they're going to be cautious because they have to be, and because there's further reaching implications as far as legal issues down the line, and they're certainly not going to be forcing a player back on the field. But everything, you've been around enough football players to know they want to play. And my gut feeling is that he's going to want to play and he's going to want to get out there. But it remains to be seen, and those issues are as cloudy as it gets. When you hear high ankle sprain, a guy's going to be out anywhere from 2, maybe up to 6 weeks when he hit for the season. Torn Achilles, you have an understanding of how long people are going to go out. People are going to be out. With concussions, you don't really have that.
And I'll tell you what, while we're on it, let's just go right there. You bring up injuries, a bunch of them again yesterday, and those, as they get in the mid part later in the season, affect teams even more. It's always next man up. When it's the quarterback, it's always a bigger deal. You mentioned Foles. As he goes down, Mark Sanchez came in there for the Eagles yesterday, but now Foles broken collarbone, he's going to be out, what did I see, was it 4 to 6 weeks? Is that what they're looking at?
Well, minimum of 4, and he's going to have an MRI today, and they'll probably have a better indication. I haven't seen if they said anything yet, but it's on his non-throwing shoulder, so that might help a little bit. You look at Aaron Rodgers, though. I mean, he got injured in week 9, last year. Came back in week 17. 4 weeks is generous in a good sense. I don't think there's any way he's going to be back that quickly if it is broken. And it's going to be Mark Sanchez moving forward for the foreseeable future. And, you talk about that mentality of next man up. A lot of coaches pay lip service to that. Chip Kelly believes in it. Mark Sanchez, usually you lose your starting quarterback, and you'll see offenses go into a shell. Not the Eagles. They were ripping from play one. They were just throwing the ball down the field. They didn't alter things one iota. And we'll see if Mark Sanchez is able to do the same types of things they've been able to do offensively. But if there's one team that believes in that next man up mantra, it's Chip Kelly and the Eagles.
Yeah, you kind of hit what I was going to ask you. I was going to say, do you expect Chip Kelly and them to alter anything with Sanchez being the guy for the next month or so? But, apparently they'll give him what he can handle and see. And that'll be interesting, too, because it's Mark Sanchez in a different environment than where he had his biggest, best-known run there. We'll see what kind of quarterback he really can be, because there's a lot of people that just insist that the Jets just ruined that guy as a quarterback, man. While we're talking about injuries, big ones, yesterday, I don't know if anything's come out since we've been on the air with Arian Foster, but I know that I saw the clip right away yesterday as it was going, because I happen to have Alfred Blue on my fantasy team. So I notice when certain people get hurt, and he's the one that's above my guy. But he goes down, comes up, he goes down on his own, slams his helmet. Clearly he's got some concerns about the groin. What's the latest you've heard about Arian Foster? I know they got a bye week this week.
Yeah, and that's obviously going to help, and we'll see, how difficult it is. Obviously, if it's torn or something like that, it's a far more significant injury that'll be weeks and weeks. Though you're right, it seems tell by a player's reaction or not. But it's not always 100%. I've seen guys and look like, they're going to be gone for the season. They head to the sidelines and they're back a few plays. Doctors, things can hurt and feel bad at a certain point and not be as serious as originally thought. And obviously, you're talking about a guy who had significant injury issues last year, and he's been the main impact player on that Houston offense, which obviously struggles at times throwing the ball with Ryan Fitzpatrick. So that would be a very big loss. And even though Houston fell back to 4-5, it's not a very good division. We know Andrew Luck and Indianapolis are at the top of it and expected to win pretty easily, and I still expect that. But all of a sudden, if the Colts lose, the Texans are still not out of things. So this is
Yeah, and you know what? We didn't even touch on it while we're talking about injuries in that game and Philly and Chip Kelly and making replacements. On the other side of the ball, every bit as big. D'Amico Ryan's gone for most likely the season with the Achilles injury there. That one's going to hurt Philly as well. So on both sides of the ball, you lose an important piece.
Yeah, they lost their leaders. I mean, they lost the quarterback on offense and the quarterback of the defense. That's what D'Amico Ryan's is. And they also probably lost Todd Harriman, who's one of their starting guards. They've had so many injuries on the offensive line this season. But they're scheduled to get Evan Mathis back next week. Again, if there's any coach, you hear it all the time that says, all right, next man up, but then you see how they play, and they don't play like next man up. Chip Kelly, I saw a game earlier this season I was at where he was missing 4 of his 5 offensive linemen once Jason Peters got ejected from a game for fighting. He was down 4/5 of his offensive line, and he went right down the field and scored with 4 backups on his offensive line. I've never seen a team lose 4 offensive linemen, and certainly if they did, they wouldn't be chucking the ball down the field. He just believes what he believes in. He believes in his system, and so far it's worked out very good for him.
Sure has. Cincinnati, of course, with that victory yesterday, Giovanni Bernard doesn't play out with the Browns. I don't know where he's going to be with that game looming, but that's nothing to lean on there because Jeremy Hill stepped up, first career start, 24 carries, 154 yards and 2 touchdowns. A good replacement there for the Bengals, and obviously with the Browns' problems stopping the run, that's going to be dead set in the focus for what's going down this Thursday.
Yeah, and the Bengals are loaded offensively. I mean, one of the issues in their struggles was, Green being out for a number of weeks, and the fact that he was able to get back on the field, that opens things up for the running game. And as he said, when they have Hill and Bernard, and at some point Tyler Eifert's going to be back. He's been out for with a dislocated elbow. So, I mean, and remember, on top of that, Marvin Jones hasn't even played this season. So when you have Green and Eifert and Sanu and Gresham and Hill and Bernard, they're difficult. They are tough to deal with, and it's a very difficult test. I mean, you can't candy coat things for the Browns this week because as that team gets healthier and healthier. Green being the key component to it all because he's so difficult as a threat outside the numbers, and that opens up everything underneath in the running game and for Andy Dalton.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even if Joe Hayden does a good job in coverage on A.J. Green, you got to worry about Sanu, who I love what he's done here this season. You got all the other weapons, and you got the running game. I mean, definitely this will be. You got to say, because Pittsburgh's offense was clearly not playing at the clip that they're playing now when they played the Browns, because otherwise I'd say you could argue Pittsburgh, but not necessarily when the Browns played them. That's going to be the toughest offense, I believe. New Orleans, yeah, but not as much outdoors, but that's going to be one of the toughest offenses the Browns have seen so far this season. That defense is really going to have their work cut out for them. And you know what? Maybe that's where a short week helps you because there's less to think about, less prep work. We're going to keep the game plan more basic because we've got less time to install too much stuff. Maybe that works out to the short week and the road team's favor there for the Browns. Who knows? Both teams have the same circumstances, but that's going to be, like you said, a tough offense for the Browns defense to deal with. Let's look around quickly. Some of the other stuff in the NFL. The marquee matchup, of course, was Brady and Manning 16, and didn't quite live up to the hype as far as a competitive game. A lot of points scored in that one, but New England, man, they handily defeated Denver. Did you see that one coming?
No, you never expect Denver to get beat that badly, so that part of it was a surprise. You're not going to fall over when New England wins at home. I think they've won 14 straight at home, so they're going to be very, very difficult in Foxborough, and it was going to be a take your temperature game for the AFC, and all of a sudden, it's kind of funny. Tom Brady was done, I don't know, in week 3 when they played so poorly. People were saying, well, are the Patriots going to look towards Jimmy Garoppolo? That's the kind of insanity you have in the myopic, what we talked about with inside a particular city. People in Boston were saying, maybe we have to think about moving on from